that major scandal regarding Donald Trump and a tape call pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State to find the votes to overturn the election? There's now a huge development in that story. A special grand jury that investigated election interference by the former twice impeached president arrested people on a range of charges. The special grand jury's forewoman, Emily Kors, told the New York Times that, quote, it is not a short list. Late today, NBC's Blaine Alexander also spoke with Kors for her first televised interview. She shared more on what to expect from that.
Talking about more than a dozen people?
I would say that. Yes.
Okay. Are these recognizable names that people would know?
There are certainly names that you recognize.
Did the grand jury recommend an indictment of former
indictments? I don't think that there are any giant plot twists coming. I don't think that there are any giant. That's the way I expected this to go at all. I don't think that's in.
Joining now is Democratic strategist Kurt Bardella and Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. attorney, professor at the University of Michigan School of Law, and MSNBC legal analyst. Barbara, I'll start with, I was riveted by that interview because but she's got to wait a couple because of the NDA. She can't tell you. Like, what? Just from your assessment, what is it like to see a foreman basically say, hey, they're surprising, but you shouldn't be too surprised? What might that indicate about what this grand jury concluded?
I cringe anytime you see a grand jury foreperson talking about what happened before the grand jury. There are grand jury secrecy rules to protect people who might be under suspicion. Now, I think we complied with the letter of the rule, which says she's not supposed to talk about the grand jury's deliberations. And so she was recommended for indictment, or that went down. But boy, she comes awfully close to that. So it makes me a little bit nervous. But I do think when she says that they recommended that more than a dozen people be indicted in direct response to that question about Donald Trump, she says it's not going to be too late to listen to about Donald Trump. I don't know whether they did or didn't recommend Donald Trump, but it sounds like, if I were a betting person, I'd bet the answer is yes.
See, this is the thing. This is where this gets me. All of this is sort of us litigating the criminality and the attempts to but that pales in comparison to nonsense we're already seeing for the 2024 election. We've got Ron DeSantis running around and he's giving speeches. You got Nikki Haley running around. She's giving speeches. And this is my question to you. And I'm going to give you some sound, but I have to set this up properly. In my view, there are three states. You run from New York, you're liberal. You run from California, you're too crazy, you're liberal. You're trying to make sure I can't get plastic straws. You run from Florida, it's all crystal meth and alligators, right? That's people think. And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying those are sort of the national reputations of those states. So, and claiming that he's going to do for America what he's done in Florida, it seems like that'd be a problem. I want to play you some sound from him, and then also how that's failed in the past, and get your thoughts on the other side.
So what have we done in Florida? When they were talking about defunding my watch, as much as I'm proud Florida is doing well, I want the country to do well. I want all of these communities to do well. Now,
Kurt, that may make sense in some context. He can talk about policy, right? Mm-hmm. But are those out of Florida?
No. I mean, we must have entered some sort of quantum realm here if Ron DeSantis thinks that the entirety of the United States of America wants to have happen in our country what he has done to the state of Florida. If he thinks that most of this country, they want to spend their time banning books, if they want to spend their time dealing with massive impacts of climate change, which way will hit the state of Florida first, that's not a recipe for a good national conversation, a healthy national conversation. And when you factor that in with the absolute we're hearing from the Republican Party overall in the state of Michigan, they just elected a party chair that's elected talking about secession, basically the violent overthrow of government. This is where the Republican Party is at right now. It's not a conversation that the rest of this country wants to have. And you know that just look at the lack of interest in the BS investigations that the Republicans are running around doing. Every single failed strategy.
Barbara, I'm going to hit you with a political question because I think this is relevant. We've seen Ron DeSantis use his political power, use policy, threats, government, everything else to try to bully Disney, right? He's a company that supports or engages in behavior that leads to criminality. But all that brings to mind to me is a former president who decided he wanted to attack something very popular. I want to play you some sound from Mitt Romney and get your thoughts on the other side.
Things I like PBS. I love Big Bird, like you too. But I'm not gonna keep on spending money on things to borrow money from China to pay for.
So the guy who said I'm going to put Big Bird out of a job is not winning. I don't see how the guy who says I think Disney Plus is the home. Do you think, Barbara, nationally, that when people look, when businesses and focus groups and lawyers organizations look at how he's using the laws in his state to abuse an entity like this, do you think that makes him more popular? Do you think that makes organizations?
There's an interesting divide, I think, Republican Party. There is the traditional, Chamber of Commerce business base, and there is sort of the MAGA Trump group wants to engage in the culture wars. And I don't know that you can win any state without that Governor Ron DeSantis alienates the Chamber of Commerce business community. I think the less likely he is able to win a state. And, I think nationwide that's been true. I think at some point, losing those kinds of business votes.
A lot of times I think Republicans are more interested in fight than the actual victory. They spent 60 years trying to overthrow abortion. Now they don't know what to do. They're in this fight now with Disney and all sorts of cultural things, but these are battles that you can actually win. Where does this actually put someone like Ron DeSantis side of the sort of bubble of right-wing media? How does that play in Texas where people are watching Disney Plus? How does that play in Illinois where people are like, hey, we decided we actually wanted to go see Ant-Man Quantumania? How does this play out with normal people?
It plays out terribly for him. Listen, through mass shootings, there's a problem. There's a complete disconnect with where real people and real parents are at. When you spend more time banning books and going after curriculum and inventing scare tactics to try to justify what is right white nationalist racist agenda, you're alienating a large swath of the population. And we're seeing now with the veneer Fox being pierced recently, with all the revelations about what they really think about what's going on in the country and how different that is from what they present publicly, anytime they have to go outside of that, it's not good. They just fold, and they don't know how to talk about things beyond that world today. And you will see him vulnerable. You'll see him tripping over himself. You will see him not be able to put together a comprehensive, coherent thought because he doesn't know how to do that.
Apparently, it is a small media world after all, and